The skies above Metropolis are a little bit more crowded now that Lois Lane is the Woman of Steel. This week, we're going to be taking a look at DC's Superwoman Special. Let me know down below in the comments what you guys thought of this one-shot issue. I'm Brennan for the New Wave Nerds. Like and subscribe down below for more nerd content and commentary. Now let's roll the intro. The Superwoman Special is written by Joshua Williamson with art by Edwin Galmon and gives us the origin of how Lois Lane gained her powers and became the Woman of Steel. So, non-spoiler reviews, I will say that I enjoyed this comic. It's definitely not the best thing that I read in 2024, but it is certainly up there. I did enjoy it. I liked the format of the storytelling. I liked the way that it sort of weaved in some of the other various story arcs going on, what with the major event that started the DC All-In initiative, and melding in some of the other Action Comics and Superman runs. I thought that that was fun. And I thought the story had a lot of heart. I enjoyed seeing the relationship between Lois and Clark sort of evolve here. I very much enjoyed it. It's currently available now for free on DC Universe Infinite, or your local comic shop may still have a copy available, though that's a little bit less likely now that the comic's been out for a couple months. In any case, why don't we jump right into the comic here? So, as I said, the comic mostly follows, it entirely follows Lois Lane as we learn her origin and how she became the Woman of Steel. Now, I will say that the way that she got her powers makes a certain amount of sense. There is something that is missing that I hope is going to be explained in the future here, or it's something that I've missed in the past. As I've mentioned before on these videos, it's really recent that I have been able to that I have gotten involved reading the comic issues as they are released. Traditionally, I only read comics in the form of the trade paperbacks, and so I only read the celebrated runs. I only read the best storylines, and I only read them years after they had been released. And so now I am catching up, I am reading the current stuff, but I've definitely missed out a lot on the recent years. I don't think I've read anything, well, I've read some things, but I've read almost nothing from DC from the years of, let's say, 2016 up until 2024. So that's quite a big time change. That's quite a big shift. I missed all of Rebirth. I don't think I've read a single Rebirth comic. I missed Dawn of DC. Infinite Horizons, I think, was something. I don't remember. In any case, I've missed quite a bit. So there's a chance that the origin of the thing that sort of confuses me has been explained and I've just missed it, or it's something that hopefully we're going to read more about in the future. Now, let's get into the actual origin here. So, as I have discussed on our previous videos for Absolute Wonder Woman and Absolute Superman, the big event that led into this new initiative for DC All-In was Absolute Power. Now, I'm not going to get super in-depth here, but the short and skinny of it is that Amanda Waller, you know her, you love her, played by Viola Davis in the recent DC stuff. She's a mainstay in the DC universe. She has finally enacted her plan to rid the world of superheroes. And one of the ways that she does this is she uses AI to hack into all of the news feeds in the world and produce deepfake images of superheroes attacking civilians. And furthermore, so that's the way that she, sort of affects public opinion with regards to the superheroes. And then as for how she directly attacks the heroes, she has these Amazobots, which are people familiar with DC will be aware of the Amazos. This is a new iteration. I believe there is 4 different bots. I think there's only 4. There could be more, but I'm pretty sure there's only 4 that have, the powers of the main superheroes and basically are incredibly difficult to beat. Now, that obviously is a very superhero, superpowered conflict. And so All of the heroes are going off and fighting that. Meanwhile, Lois Lane has taken over the role as editor-in-chief at the Daily Planet. This is prior to her gaining her powers. Perry White has run for mayor, and so now Lois is the editor-in-chief, and she's trying to take back the news. Now, the way that she gets her powers is that she learns through a suit that was made by Lex Luthor. She learns that the heroes are attacking the the heroes are attacking the Amazos and assaulting Amanda Waller at her base of operations on the island of Gamora. And Lois hears this and she thinks, golly gee, I have got to help in whatever way I can. So she puts on this suit, which was again designed by Lex Luthor, and she begins to fly to Gamora. But the conflict is over before Lois arrives on the island. And when it happens, the way that it happens is that the Amazos are like shut down, essentially. And when the Amazos get shut down, the suit that Lois is wearing also gets shut down because, again, somehow they are connected. And that's the part that kind of confuses me. I'm not 100% sure why or how they are connected. At first, I thought that this was the suit that was worn by Lex in the Men of Steel comic arc, which I believe came out in 2023. I'm not sure. But I don't think it's the same suit anymore because they do look kind of different. I don't think it's exactly the same thing. So I'm wondering if I'm missing something in the massive deluge of comics that explains why this is connected to the Amazos system, why this is connected to Waller's. But in any case, when absolute power ends, I should say the reason the Amazos have the powers is because they've been stealing them from the superheroes. Some of them are depowered, and when the Amazos get destroyed, and when also the Lex Luthor suit gets destroyed, the powers are then redistributed to people across the globe. Some people have the same powers that they had before. Some people's powers are swapped. For example, fire and ice have their powers swapped. Some people lose their powers entirely, like Barry Allen. And when that happens, Lois somehow wakes up back in Metropolis, and she realizes that she has the same powers as Superman. Now, we go throughout the events of the comic. She is describing what happens, and she goes to Mercy, who is a former Lex Luthor employee. She runs what is currently known as Supercorp, and they run a battery of tests, and they learn that Lois does have powers. They have been the way they describe it is that her cells have been supercharged, but they're not sure if she is able to continue absorbing the radiation of the Earth's yellow sun. Now, that is one thing that I do think is kind of weird. Like Superman's powers are they function different from like most other superheroes, insofar as like Superman's an alien, right? So his powers come from his physiology. So I don't know how that can be necessarily transferred to a human. That doesn't quite make sense to me. It's just, we're just supposed to, comic books. But it doesn't work in the same way, right? Like like Barry Allen, he's a human who gains these powers through an accident that happens in a lab, and there's chemicals and the lightning and the speed force and whatnot. And so that makes a certain amount of sense that his powers could be taken away and given to someone else. In a certain amount of sense, in that, like, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of it. I have problems with the absolute power storyline, and maybe one of these days I'll do a video about that. I wasn't a huge fan of the event, but in any case, that makes a little bit more sense because there's something that has been granted to him, right? There's something that have been added later on. But the powers that a Kryptonian has, again, they are born in the physiology. It is the cells themselves that are gathering up the radiation and, allowing him to leap tall buildings in a single bound, be faster than a speeding bullet and whatnot. So I don't understand really how Lois's cells could be supercharged like that. But in any case, it is what it is. And it is. So I guess the way that I want to say this is that I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the way that Lois gets her powers, but after she gets the powers, I really enjoy like the character development that she goes through. I really enjoy the format of this comic. The way that it works is we get all of this through like backstory. It is Lois telling her let me rephrase actually. The comic starts out with Lois working in the office trying to write a story, and she's struggling with this writer's block. She doesn't know what she's supposed to say here. It's just not coming to her. And Supergirl and Kara geez, why could I never remember her last name? Kara Zor-El and Lana Lang show up in her office and are like, hey, time for a break. And Lois is like, no, I gotta work. And then they're like, oh, sorry, we meant, do you want to fight crime with us? And then they go off and they fight crime. And so then the function of the backstory operates in, after they fight crime, Supergirl and Lana Lang are like, hey, what were you yelling about yourself? And she's like, I got writer's block, and when I used to have this, it used to be that I could pitch to Perry, but now I'm the editor, he's the mayor, I got nobody to pitch to. And so Supergirl is like, well, why don't you pitch to us, talk through it with us? And so then that's how we get the function of the backstory. And it's really interesting, again, given the fact that Lois Lane is Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. She is the Daily Planet's editor-in-chief. Being a reporter is so fundamental to her character that I really enjoyed the way that Williamson worked those two things together, right? He worked the fact that she is a reporter and she has to struggle with this superpowered nature that she now has. And it's different than with Clark, right? Because again, Clark grew up with the powers. He has a bit of an understanding and all that. All this happens to Lois very fast. And I really, really enjoyed, towards the end of the comic, the quote-unquote closure we get for Lois Lane and her writer's block is that Kara and Lana, I guess I can't remember who actually says the line, but they say the reason that you have writer's block is because you're guilty, right? Lois, she feels guilty because she has so much fun with these superpowers. And I think that's a really, really interesting thing to discuss and to sort of approach. Like, that's not something that you necessarily think about, right? The guilt of having fun with these superpowers, even though the fact that you have superpowers means that to a certain extent you have a responsibility to help those in need. I think it's an interesting dichotomy, and I'm glad that it's sort of approached here. I thought it was really, really fun. And I liked Lois's, again, her character development here. It was really interesting to see somebody new experience gaining these powers. Now, there is one problem that I do have with this comic book, and it may be already slightly apparent, though maybe not quite so much. As I just mentioned, the people with whom Lois Lane fights crime are Supergirl, Kara Zor-El, that's completely normal, and Lana Lang. Evidently, and this is something that is news to me, and I guess I missed the comic where this happened, Lana Lang, former love interest to Clark Kent, Smallville alum, she also has superpowers. And what's more, she is also called Superwoman. Right, it's kind of weird. And they even have like a throwaway line of dialogue in there where when they first when they first decide that they're going to discuss the story, where Lois is like, "Hey, Lana, are you cool with the Superwoman thing?" And Lana goes, "Yeah, I'll just be Superwoman red and you can be Superwoman blue. If there's a million Green Lanterns, then we can do this." And I went, no, I don't think that necessarily works. I mean, the point is that Green Lantern is like a title, right? It's not like, obviously originally it sort of started as like a superhero name, but as it exists now in the universe, Green Lantern is a title. It's a job title. It's like Detective Green Lantern Stewart, Detective Stewart. It's like it's not I mean, it's a name as it functions, but it's more or less a title, where Superwoman isn't a title, right? I don't know. It just seems weird. It seems like a bit of an oversight. It seemed like the kind of thing where they're like, okay, well, let's give Lois superpowers and we'll call her Superwoman because that's really cool and that works with Superman, and that makes a lot of sense. And then they were like, oh, wait, we already have a Superwoman. How are we going to, square this circle? And I don't know. I just think it's weird and clumsy. And it sort of brings me to my main problem. And this problem is not necessarily localized to this comic. This is a problem that extends to the broader Superman mythos, to the broader DC Comics as it stands now. I feel like there are just far, far, far too many super people, right? I always felt like, and this is an argument that was made by the writer for Crisis on Infinite Earths, the comic whose name I can't remember, Marv Wolfman. I kept wanting to say Ron Mars, but it's Marv Wolfman. The argument that he makes for why spoiler alert for a comic that's now like 40 years old, that is one of the most famous comic story arcs ever written and completely changed the entire industry. But skip forward like 2 minutes if you don't want to hear this. The argument that Marv Wolfman makes for why he decided to kill off Supergirl is because having, two super people, and having this many super people, like, took some of the luster and some of the importance. That's not the word I'm looking for. Took some of the uniqueness out of Superman, right? The idea is that he's the last son of Krypton, and so it's like he's the one person who can kind of do the things that he does. And I feel like that's sort of where we're at right now, right? Like, don't get me wrong. I don't think we need to kill off every single person who has these powers, because I love Supergirl. I've said this a million times before. I think she's. I would have to give this some long thought, but probably top 7 DC superheroes, maybe even top 5. I don't know. It's tough. I would really have to do some thinking about that. I don't know. You're going to have to give me time there. Definitely top 10, almost certainly top 7, maybe top 5. But so the point is that I really enjoy her, right? So I'm not saying you need to kill off everybody. I don't think, like, for example, let's see, we've got a scene in this comic where it is like a battle with Supercorp. And so we get to see, everybody standing around, and it just feels like there are just so many people. So obviously we need to keep Superman. Obviously, like I said, I think we should keep Supergirl. And then after this, it's like everybody after this is sort of like, iffy. Like, we, take him or leave him, right? Obviously, I mentioned Lana Lang, Superwoman. I don't think that should. I just don't like why that. And again, I need to read the comic where she gets these powers, but I just don't like it. It doesn't make sense. Why is it Lana Lang? And furthermore, why does she look so different from everybody? Like, everybody's obviously got the, the red and blue and yellow, like, coloring. And then she is white and orange. And it looks like she's completely on fire. I don't know. I don't like the way it looks. And again, I think her having these powers takes away from, like, the importance of, like, Superman and stuff. Then after that, we have Steelworks, which, a character that I'm not necessarily super familiar with. I'm currently reading through the entire, not the entire, but like the last part of the Triangle era. I guess maybe it's not the last part. I might have misspoke. But I'm reading I have read The Death of Superman and Funeral for a Friend. I'm now reading Reign of the Supermen. And the next issue I have is the introduction of the character, right? So maybe after I read through this, I'll start to like it and all that and feel a little slightly different. But right now it just feels like I don't even know if he's the right way to describe the character, but it feels maybe slightly out of place. Again, I don't know. It just feels like, and I suppose that's not necessarily the same because he's, it looks like he's, a robot or whatever. So maybe that doesn't necessarily count. So maybe he can stay in Supercorp. But Superboy is tough because that's Superboy, right? Like this is, he's a fun character. I really, really enjoy him. Just created by the Cadmus project, I believe, and is a clone of Superman. I think there's some interesting things that could happen there. But again, it's a type of thing where just the more people have this power, you just sort of dilute what's going on here. Let's see. Who the heck is this? Oh yeah, and then obviously, I mean, oh wait. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought never mind. Superboy and this is Connor Kent, the son of wait. No, Subject 13. Wait, so then okay, sorry. I'm confusing myself here. John Kent. That's the son of Superman. Okay. There we go. That's why I was confused. I expected his name to be okay. Bleh, sorry. So again, having John Kent, the son of Superman, that's a character that I think absolutely makes sense. I haven't read anything with him, and so I don't have any actual opinions on the character itself. But having Superman and Lois have a son makes sense, and it can be really interesting and do a lot of cool story stuff. And so that's not necessarily a big thing. But it just feels like there's way too much going on. I feel like we need to pare down the amount of Kryptonian related things here and sort of bring it back to, the heart. Pare it down so it's more interesting and more unique for Superman. I don't know. And again, maybe I would feel differently if I had read some of the comics leading up to this. Maybe if I had seen the beginning, the burgeoning of the super family, maybe I would feel a little bit differently. But as it stands right now, there's so many people. There's so many people. And it sounds like most of them are kind of useless. There's a scene in this where Mercy, again, she leads Supercorp. I think she's a former Lex Luthor employee. She says that it's a tough job coordinating the efforts of the entire Superman family to cover the amount of area that just Superman normally covers. So it's most of these people aren't worth their salt as far as Kryptonian powers go. But in any case, I don't know. It just feels like there's so many. It just feels and again, for some of these, I could be mistaken. Like I said, I'm open to being wrong about Steel, and I'm open. I don't necessarily think we need to get rid of Superboy, of Connor Kent, but Lana Lang, Superwoman Red. Why does that exist? Why does she exist? I don't know. In any case, it's just weird to me. But let's move on because I'm just repeating myself now. Moving on, I mentioned that when the fallout of absolute power takes place, the way that these people gain their powers is by essentially taking them from other people. And so the question is, if we have all of these members of the super family, from whom did Lois Lane steal her Kryptonian supercharged cells? And that answer does not get revealed until the very last panel of the comic, or the very last page of the comic, and she steals them. Or rather, let me build this up a little bit more. Let me just build up the suspense. It turns out that the suit that Lois was wearing, designed by Lex Luthor, the suit that she was wearing that gave her powers because it was tapped into the Amazos, it was like an exploratory spacesuit. And at the moment of collapse, let's say, at the moment of the power transferal, it was reaching out into space. And so we find out through some manner, this supersuit actually stole the powers from none other than General Zod, Drew Zod himself, one of the greatest Superman villains. And again, that's something that I think either I'm missing in like the creation of the suit, or it's something that is just going to get explained beforehand, or explained later on. But why is this suit reaching out to Zod? Why is it connected to Zod? How can it steal his powers from presumably, thousands, I don't know, maybe thousands, a lot of light years away? Like how? I don't get it. But that being said, the fact that I'm fine with the fact that she steals her powers from Zod, because hopefully it means we're going to get to see something incredibly cool in the future. So it seems like this comic is leading up to to the major Superman event of 2025, the return of Drew Zod. And I think that that's going to be really, really interesting, especially given the comic arc that came out in, I believe it was 2023. So a couple years ago now. Oh no, I'm sorry, 2024. Kneel Before Zod. Now this comic arc was originally announced as a 12-issue miniseries, and we only got 8 issues. So my thinking is that maybe we'll get the next 4 issues as part of the main story event. But in any case, this series follows specifically Zod as his life is essentially destroyed. It's basically completely falling apart. He loses his family, he loses his home, and he becomes essentially like the pirate captain of an army of outlaws. And as the comic ends, he is going to exact his revenge on the people who stole his family and home from him, the Khund Empire, who have a lot of dealings with the Green Lantern Corps. So I'm kind of curious if there's going to be any crossover there. I'm a big Green Lantern fan. But in any case, it ends before he gets his revenge. So I'm curious what is going to bridge the gap here. Is he on his way to get his revenge and his powers get stolen, and so he has to change course to Earth so that he can gain his powers back and then defeat the Khunds? Or has he subdued the Khunds and then he loses his superpowers, and so that's where we pick up on Earth? I don't know, but I'm really, really excited to see what happens here. I didn't expect to like the Kneel Before Zod storyline as much as I did. I thought it would be okay, but it was really, really good. And I really want to see the continuation of this character. I want to see what he does next, and I hope that they keep the same sort of attitude for him. But I don't know. We will just have to see. Like I said, I believe that this is leading up into the big event of 2025. I don't know if that has been officially announced, but I really hope it does. In any case, we're just going to have to wait and see. Let's see. The Superwoman issue, that is just a one-shot, so there's going to be no more of those. But the Superman series is continuing in earnest. Issue 21 just released a couple weeks ago, and issue number 22 will be coming out in February. Apart from that, Superman in Action Comics is a weekly series, so there's definitely no lack of Superman content if you are interested in learning more. But let's begin to wrap things up. So let me know down in the comments what you guys thought of this comic issue. If you read Superwoman, if you're aware of any of the things that I have missed, like where was this suit created, if that's something that was revealed in the past, or rather, if it's going to be something that we just have to wait and see moving forward, and we just hope that we get answers in the coming issues. I don't know, but let me know down below. Also, let me know if you read the Kneel Before Zod storyline, because, again, I didn't expect to like it. I hadn't even heard of it until I was doing research into this. So let me know if you guys think it's as good as I do, or if it's actually garbage, and I'm just, biased because I think Zod's cool. I don't know. Let me know down below. But we're going to call it there, and I will see you guys next week for another video.